Hello, my name is Cheryl Wilson. I'm an abstract artist. If you're new here, welcome. I do abstract painting, I do techniques, I do artist chats, and if you're returning, again, thank you so much for supporting me as an artist. I, again, want to tell you how much I enjoy getting to know so many of you and really getting to know those in the membership group, and especially those in the master artists, and I'm really getting to know your art. So without further ado, let's jump into this format. It's a little bit different. And the reason why is I did go down yesterday. I try to paint on Mondays and get my video out, and then it takes me a while to edit it for a release to the public on Thursday or Friday. To those in my membership, they get it either Monday, Tuesday, around that time frame, a little earlier. But I had a little procedure done yesterday morning, and the doctor told me to rest the rest of the day. Nothing major. It's just enough of a irritants to me that he actually knew I painted, and he told me not to paint. And I tried to do a painting for you all, but it was not working. I knew I was going against doctor's orders, so I stopped. And there's been a video I've been wanting to put out for you on the most frequently asked questions, because there are some are repetitive, and some are just like, a question that nobody else has asked, but it's interesting. It's enough to do a video on, to share with you some basically techniques and ideas, places to go, that are interesting, that enough that the question warrants making it on the question sheet. I don't know how many I'm going to get through today, because I have quite a few pages, but let's just see where this takes us. The questions that were asked are actually very, very good questions. So let's just get started. I'm going to put my glasses on so I can see. I think the question that I got the most throughout the thread of the different questions is, do I gesso my canvas or my paper before I paint on it? And I personally have mentioned several times in my videos, and sometimes I don't, which brings up the question, I do not gesso my paper or my canvas. And it's a preference thing. I don't, because I don't mind the texture even on raw canvas, and that is a little bit different because sometimes I do gesso raw canvas, but on the canvases that come from the stores, there's usually a coat of gesso on there. I don't add more gesso to that. And then the paper, I don't add gesso to that because I like the look of it blending in with my substrate. And I actually decided to get a little more technical with you and tell you what gesso is. It's very similar to white acrylic paint. You can get gesso in a couple different ways. You can get titanium white gesso, you can get regular gesso, you can get clear gesso, you can get gessos in colors. I have black and gray, and I love black gesso. But what it does, it's a little thinner than acrylic paint, and it dries hard. Its main purpose is to prime the surface. So if you get a canvas and it has a layer of gesso on it, sometimes you want a surface that is a little bit more so the paint doesn't soak through into the weave of the canvas. So you may want to put one or two or even three more coats of gesso on there. It's, like I said, it's traditionally white. You can get clear, and there's two different kinds. And this prompts into another question I got was, my gesso doesn't seem to be very opaque, although gesso white gesso is supposed to be opaque. You can get artist quality gesso and student quality, and the student quality doesn't have as much pigment in it, so it might not be as opaque, which is you can't see through it. So I have one artist that draws lines to paint between the lines of, they're more of a objective type artist, and they want to many times change those lines, and the gesso doesn't cover it. A couple things I've told them: either get a more higher quality gesso, a artist quality, or you can mix a little bit of, say, a very light yellow with it. If you mix or even more of an opaque paint with it, very light, to give it a tint, that's going to bring your gesso into more of an opaque. So try a couple things. Either upgrade your gesso to a artist quality, change it to a titanium white gesso as opposed to just a regular gesso. I've been told, and I've researched, there are both. And then if you want, add a little bit of acrylic paint to the gesso to tint it a little bit, and that will bring some of the transparency down over to more of an opaque. Let's see. Along with the gesso, a question that was asked once is, how can you tell if the canvas lacks tooth or absorbency? And that is just mainly getting used to the different canvases. I've gotten good quality canvases, and they've reacted differently to the style of paint I use. So you can just do little tests on the canvas to see if the paint absorbs into the weave or not, but not every brand from every company is the same on your, even the canvases that you get that are gessoed. So you might have to just learn. There's one brand, I probably don't even want to say the name, that I got, and I will never buy them again. I just felt they were, even though they were expensive, the quality to me didn't work for me. So try out different kinds until you find. I actually love the ones from Michaels. I think that the painting on them is great, and I love raw canvas, but that takes a special look that you want to paint on raw canvas. So really, it depends on you. It depends on what you want from your outcome. There's another question I got that was, what is the difference between titanium white paint and mixing white? And there is like a zinc white. Titanium white is the whitest and the most opaque. Zinc white, and there's a mixing white, is more transparent. And those, there's a whole conversation on those, but mixing white is great if you want to do glazes and things like that, where you want a transparency in your white. I got the question, if I start over, should I gesso or use white paint? The answer to that is it depends. If you don't have gesso, just use white paint. If it's a large painting, gesso, for the most part, is less expensive than white paint. So you just have to cost out what you have. Some white paint, like golden, is expensive. There are other white paints out there. I have had cheaper, less expensive, I guess is a better word than cheaper, white paints that I use for covering large areas, but gesso's fine for that. What type of paper do you use with your paper pieces? I get that question an awful lot. And I don't use my paper for watercoloring. So I will use a less expensive watercolor paper to do my acrylics on, because I'm not a watercolorist, a true watercolorist. So I use for a lot of my examples for you all, and then I will sell them, is the Canson Extra Large Watercolor 11 by 15 or even larger, 140 pound. Now, if you want heavier paper, you can get heavier paper, but to take my paper pieces, once they're dry, I just flatten them and put a piece of like, baking paper or a non-stick wax paper, and then I put books on top to flatten them out, and they turn out fine. I will use all different types of paper. I will use art boards. I will use canvas boards. I like to use all different kinds. You've seen me use canvas boards, smaller ones, when I've gone on trips to use as business cards for those that seem very serious, and I've actually gotten sold paintings from that type of a contact. People more apt not to throw away a little tiny mini painting and a business card. A lot of times they'll trash it, maybe even before they get off the plane. I don't know, but usually they don't trash a little painting. Another, how do I join your membership? Lately I've gotten that question a lot. Memberships with YouTube, for me, were new. I got invited to participate in a membership several months back, and when I did, I signed up several levels. There is just a supporter, and that's $1.99 a month, and those are just for those to support me and to help me out with the funds for buying the supplies I do and when I try out new things for you all. Then there's the Artisan, which is the bulk of where people have signed up for, and that's $9.99. And that is to get, we've done quite a few videos already for the last 2 months, and I just put one out on value, and then I do like a tutorial book. The first one was on composition, was 20 pages, and the second one was on value, was 10, and then we do little mini videos along the way. But the main promise is one large video a month, and that's the Artisan. And then there's a Master Artisan, which is $19.99, and then that includes all the other things, and you do get early access to the videos. But it also includes a review, and I do a very, very, very thorough review of 3 paintings a month. And I have several in that. And the comments I've gotten was, I think they were quite surprised at how thorough. I've spent sometimes, a little over an hour per painting to give some input and actually go into the painting in a program and change some things, change value. So I put a lot of effort into it to try to help you grow areas where I think will help you change your painting and enhance your painting. And so you can even join a particular membership and stay for a month, change back and forth, depends on your needs. But how you join is on my main page, or even within a video, up above near my name should be a join button. And if you're within a video, you have to look for it on the main page, and within the video, it's still up there on the top by my name. It's in a couple different places. I have found that if you're on an iPhone or iPad, you have to change that over to a desktop version to be able to see the join button. Or you could go to a desktop computer or a non-iPad and join that way, and several people have gone to a computer to join. So on the Android, it's easy. The join button is there. On an iPad, there is a way to switch your iPad over to a desktop version, but the easiest way people have told me was they just go to a desktop and find the join button and join that way. So that answers that question. I love to see you there. We have a nice group of both men and women, and we have a lot of fun. And I hope to really put out some good training and quality videos that go into a lot more depth than I even could on the regular channel. Do you seal your artwork that's on paper when finished? I got that question a lot. And if I put charcoal or graphite or anything that's water soluble, and that means when water hits it, it's going to bleed, I will put fixative, and in fact I will put fixative right within while I'm doing the painting. Or you could use gel medium. It takes a couple coats of gel medium or fixative spray, and I have in my Amazon store, which the link will be below, because there'll be a lot of questions where I will direct you to the Amazon store. That's where I put a lot of the things that I use that are on Amazon, and I do get a lot from Amazon because I find that it's easy to direct you to those things. I also go to Michael's or Blick or Jerry's Artorama. They're all kind of the same. Jerry's kind of gave me a hard time on a broken item until, I got their attention that I spent a lot of money and they helped me out. But they're all about the same. And with the Amazon store, you'll see the fixatives, you'll see that the gel medium, all those things. But gel medium will take a couple coats, takes a while to dry. But that's if you want to stop the bleeding of a particular water-soluble markings that you put in your painting. Or you can wait till the painting is finished and then spray the fixative to keep it from blending or getting anytime water might hit it. That's different because there's a question down below, and I may hit it here, is do I varnish my work? Usually my paper products, I will put a light varnish, just a matte varnish before I send it out. But my paintings, I always ask the collector, do you want a varnish, and do you want matte, semi-gloss, or gloss? The varnish helps keep the paintings from getting dirty. And then I did have a painting when I first started selling my art. A gentleman had a leak from the apartment above, and it leaked down, and that wall was right where my painting was. And it did not damage. I had a good varnish on it. It didn't even damage it. I do a letter of authenticity, so he actually wanted me to check out the painting. So the insurance company, because I had a letter of authenticity, actually paid me to review the painting to make sure it was secure and nothing had happened to it. So the varnish saved that painting from anything on there that may have been still unsecure as a water soluble from smearing. How do you know when you're done with a painting? That question, the more I paint, the more I study, the more I practice as an artist, the more and this will be a whole nother video, the more I work on leveling up my art. And what I mean by that is, without getting into a long exhortation on this, is I work to better my work. I know when a painting is finished. It's funny because some people, that's bothering me, some people know when their painting is finished when it's packed up and it goes to the collector. You can't paint on it anymore. Some people continually work on their paintings, and there are paintings that I will go back and revisit, especially if I've walked by it and I just like the painting behind me. Sometimes I may want to go back and add a mark of pencil on it, scribble. But for the most part, knowing myself as an artist, I know when the painting is finished, and that just comes from experience and getting used to your marks. I know when a painting is not finished for sure because it doesn't feel like it has enough of the leveling up. It doesn't look like it's going to go in a home. I want my paintings to go in large homes, with large abstracts. And so I like a statement piece. And I do a lot of looking at large homes that sell for millions of dollars, and you see those abstracts in there. Those are the abstracts I want to create. And so that's what I work towards. And so when a painting has just a couple layers on it, for me, it's not done. So saying all that means to say, as an artist, you will get to know when your painting is to the point that you know it's done for your artistic style. And mine usually in one of the future videos will be the different marks that I add to my paintings, the spray paints, the type of markings that I put on there, just different palette knife paint swatches that I make through the end of the painting. Those are all things that I know when I've added those, my painting is done. So let's see. So I basically, I wanted to mention, I do have a sheet. I've mentioned this before, maybe I haven't in a while, but it's a What Do I Love sheet. And it's an ongoing, and I do have it on my PayHip page where you can download it, but it has a listing, and I continually add the things that I love. And when I'm at a painting and I don't know if I'm done, because in my mind when I look at it something's missing, I will look at that sheet and it will remind me of a mark or two that I will add, and then I know the painting is done. It just comes from being seasoned at painting. What do you think about tempera paints? Are they archival? I don't really use tempera paints. And I did get some tempera sticks. I haven't really used them yet. But I know that a tempera paint, and I'm going to read this because I'm not as familiar with them, they're washable and they can be reactivated with water. Whereas acrylic paint dries permanently, so you would need to ensure that your tempera paints are varnished in some way so they don't come reactivated. Are they archival? That word archival is a word that was thrown around more maybe 5 or 6 years ago. More and more artists are using more and more pieces, things within their art. So what happens is, does that piece become non-archival? And that all depends. Archival is something that's going to last for years and years and years and years and years. I don't think we always know if something is going to last years and years and years and years and years. So here's what I do. I put a coat of varnish on any piece, several coats of varnish on any piece that I feel might be considered unstable. So I think I've answered that enough. I might get some tempera paints, but at this point I'm not quite sure if I would use them, so that would all depend. If I had some extra funds, I might dive into that. There's a lot of things that I'd like to do, but I have learned, and this wasn't true when I was an artist. I used to buy everything that I could. I actually had a full-time job and I was painting on the side. I had extra money. And so I dabbled in everything. And I have some friends now that are going through that where they dabble in everything. And so I have a gel plate. I had every type of paint maybe that you could have. And I found that as I became more of a seasoned artist, and I'm not saying I'm a pro 100%, I know what I'm doing artist, because I think we're all learning, and I love the fact that you can say that you're still learning. But I learn some things I don't want to do, and there's a question later on about oil paints that I'll talk about. There are some areas that I don't want to get into because I now know my voice. I know currently where I'm at and what I want to do and the style I want. And getting off into other tangents when something new comes out, it takes me into another line that I have to then refocus myself back, if you know what I mean. If you're beginning your journey as an artist, there's going to be so many things you're going to want to try, and it's fun. It's fun to get a box of new stuff. I'm not saying I don't get new stuff. I still get a lot of new stuff, but it's all to hone in my particular style. And it's not like buying a whole bunch of oil paints or a whole bunch of tempera paints to try out, because I don't want to, or the cold wax. I just don't get into the cold wax. So long story short, tempera paints I know a little bit about, so I hope I answered that question okay. Next question. Do you use only water to thin your paint so that the blow dryer moves it, or do you use something else? Many times I will spray water on my paints. I used to do the flow art when that was really super popular, and I love that. I made some beautiful paintings, and they've all sold, I believe, but maybe one or two that I've kept for myself. But that I did some water, but I also use, there's a lot of other mediums out there. I will use, it's early in the morning. What is it called? Air spray medium. I'll put that down below. If I ever forget to put something down below, message me and tell me, Cheryl, you told me you'd put that down below and you didn't. But it's like the air gun type medium. I will use that a lot in my paints because I know it's from Golden. I know it's a good quality and it's not going to break down any pigments or have any issue. There are flow aids. There's like glazing mediums. There's a lot of those that are more liquidy that are from like good quality. I'm not saying the student grade aren't good, but since I sell my paintings and I sell them for, quite a bit of money, I don't want to use the student grade anymore because I want to ensure that the quality of my paintings are where I want them to be. So yes, I'll use water, but I use water more is in the spray bottle, and also I have alcohol in a bottle, and I always use a straighter bottle for my water, and I'll use a bottle that's kind of rounded on the bottom for my alcohol, because even though I wrote on the bottles, one is alcohol, one's water, they get paint covered. So I know that anything with a brown bottom is alcohol, and I will spray that in some of my art. Where do you get a thicker body paint? There was a painting that I did, and that was a tri-art paint. So I get my paint from different places, and usually when I do a video, I will tell you what that paint is. I use a lot of Golden. I will use tri-art paint. I will use a lot, but I always try to get the higher quality paints, not student grade, artist grade, unless it's like a pop color. But even then, like the Holbein, paints where there's like a opera rose and some really fluorescent type colors, they're still higher quality. We already talked about sealing the paintings. I talked about that in a previous question. Do you spray your painting with the fixative? We already talked about that. Yes, I do. Talked about joining the membership group. Oh, another question I got was, I mentioned a woody marker. A lot of the markers are in my Amazon store. If you go over there and you can see it's divided up into different categories. If I use a marker, I usually will have it linked there. But a woody, it's like a pencil, and it's from Stabilo, and it's wonderful. It's it comes in so many different colors. I mainly use the black, and it's just like a crayon that you put in your artwork. I believe it is water soluble, but it's just a thicker, it's a marker that I love to use the most. Do you use oil paints? There is a whole discussion. I recently heard some wonderful artists that made the comment, if you don't use oil paints, then your paintings will never sell to collectors. Now, I looked at the paintings, and it was about 98% of their paintings were realistic. I can see that. Once their paintings are done, they're done. I do abstract, and the reason why I believe people do a lot of oil, and you can certainly make comments below if you're an oil painter, it makes the oil paints are richer in color. And almost like glossy. I like a very muted, non-glossy. I will use a matte on my varnish. I don't like glossy. I like the, once you use an oil paint over your acrylic, you cannot use acrylic over that. You can do acrylic and add oil on top. And I did try that on a painting, and it became non-matte, and I don't like it as much. I understand the concept. I will use oil sticks in my paintings, and the acrylic will not stick over that. It will peel off, but there's just like lines here and there. But I do not feel with my art that I need to go over it, majority of it, with oil paints. I sell my paintings in the thousands, several of them, and my collectors have not blinked an eye that there's no oil in them. Now, I've been told that once you add oil stick of any type of oil, you have to call your painting an oil painting. I think indicating that you do have an oil stick, you could call it a mixed media. But I do not add oil paint into my painting journey because I just don't want to. I don't like the look of oil painting on my artist journey style of painting. I like very matte. Does that mean down the road that somebody would convince me to use oil paints? I don't think so, but I don't feel that my art, my abstracts, and I've sold them for several thousands of dollars, up to $5,000. I think the most I sold one currently was $5,000. If I added oil to a painting, would I increase the price to $8,000? I'm not an oil painter. I feel that my paintings end up where they are supposed to be, and that's not with oils in them. So that comment did bother me for about a month. I thought, am I not the highest quality painter that I should be as an abstract painter? You see the paintings behind me, with the exception of Park Avenue over here, right there, which has a definite story behind it. I don't need to add oils to it because that's not my style. So I hope that makes sense to you. it's a preference. Again, it all comes down to what is your preference as an artist. When I use the inks, are they watercolor? No, they're acrylic inks. And I am enjoying more and more of some of the underpainting being the acrylic. I just ordered a bunch from Holbein. I haven't gotten them yet. That are less expensive than the golden. And again, that is a new item I want to bring into my arsenal. I think I have one Holbein, but I like the fact that it's less expensive, and I do like the fluidity of the alcohol or the acrylic inks. I had the question, do I ever worry that coffee will damage the paper? Because there was a time, there was a video out there I did where I added coffee. And I did some research. And what I learned is people have been using and painting with coffee and tea for years. And so there are some people that is their main style. So adding natural elements to stain the paper is something a lot of people do, so I don't worry about it. Again, I will varnish my paintings if I have any question of the stability of anything that I've put on my art. And good varnishing should, as they call it, archive your work. Again, if you've got a comment on this, feel free to add your comment below, because this is just what I've learned and experienced. And there's so much to the art world out there. There's no way I'm going to know all of it. Do you have a video showing how to wrap a finished painting around a canvas frame? Yes, I do. And I'll put the link below. What is shop towel? A shop towel are those blue towels. They're like utility towels that mechanics use. It's in my Amazon store, and I'll put the link below. I love them. They're just, the absorbency of it is different, but I don't use them like I do paper towel. Paper towel, a lot of them have a pattern on it, but I will use the shop towel. You'll see me roll the whole roll over my painting to kind of absorb some of the paint or flatten it. Do you use your dominant or non-dominant hand for your marking when you begin? And why do you mark your page first? A lot of the markings do get covered up, but I use either hand. I don't mind starting with my dominant hand. I will encourage you to use your non-dominant hand to get looser if you have trouble being loose. And there are a lot of people who say they do. And I encourage you to use your non-dominant hand to make your marks to help you loosen up. Or hold your paintbrush real far back, or any utensil at the end to make your marks. Adding marks to the canvas is just a way to start. A lot of times they will get covered up, but it's just a way that I've started a painting that encouraged the inspiration in me to make my next marks. That's all. Where do you get the teeny tiny brayers? There are different sizes of brayers you can get, and I do have a link on my Amazon store. There's hard brayers and soft brayers. They're different. People use them for different things. For me, as I use them in my art, I will use the hard brayer to roll in like a piece of collage, or to flatten things out. But I will use both to make marks in my paintings. So it's just a mark making, and really you need to play with both of them to see what you think. There were some paintings I did where I used gold, and the gold that I use and majority of my art is it's iridescent gold from Goldens. And it's beautiful. The gold paint they have, I will use it on a palette knife and add it into my paintings in a lot of places, or drip it and then smear it with a palette knife, because the golden gold paint is absolutely stunning. There's other gold paints, but they don't have the pigment quality, and I will use those in squirt bottles from cheaper brands. But if I want a really good gold paint to be in my painting to show up, I will use it's golden. Do you find it easier to paint flat or on an easel? I do a lot of my art that you don't see because it's large paintings on the easel or on the wall. I like it because I can drip and I can turn the canvas around. A lot of the paintings I do for YouTube are flat so that you can see them. It's much harder for me to get a camera at an angle when I'm doing one on the easel or on the wall. But I like both. Main thing is I will turn my painting around upside down. Well, not upside down, but turn it, you know what I mean, upside down. I like to move the painting around so that it's a true abstract where it goes in different directions. How do you decide to price your work? When I started, my answer is this, and you can research this from other artists. When I started out my painting, long story there of how I got started, but I did not know I was going to sell my art until I was posting it and I started have people wanting to buy it. And I hadn't set up a business. I had a business with my consulting business in the professional world as a project manager and risk manager, but I did not have an art business set up. That's a whole nother conversation of how I incorporated art into my LLC. But I didn't know how to price my art, so I was just kind of like, what do you want to pay for it? And I even had my first commission off of this Park Avenue painting where she told me the price that she wanted to pay for it, and I was like, oh wow, okay, I'll do that. I soon learned that I needed to come up with a price structure. So when I first started painting, I did length times width and divided it and times it by 50 cents. So if a painting was 10 by 10, that was $100 divided by 50 cents, so $50. I soon realized that those paintings sold, so I did it by $1. Now I feel that you can't go backwards because anyone who's paid like $5,000 for my painting doesn't want to hear that I've sold a painting of that size for $2,000. That's not really fair. Your art should always increase. So I would start out at a certain level. So if you do like a 10 by 10, and that's just the art itself, it doesn't include the frame or other things. And this is for my abstract. I'm not talking about realism. You may use a different structure because you may spend 40 hours on a painting. You may spend 40 hours on an abstract painting, but you've got to have some sort of structure. So say you do 10 by 10, which is $100 times $1, which would be $100. Then when you start selling those pieces, increase to $1.50, and then to $2, and then to $2.50. And as you increase and the artwork sells, then you can keep increasing. That's the way I've worked, and I have found that works very well. I keep my artwork the same price on my website as I do for any gallery. I sell in online galleries. I don't have my work in currently in any galleries around the world. I'm not represented by any of those galleries. I've never reached out to any of them. I did one, and they told me to get back in touch with them in December, but I don't have an outside gallery. They're online galleries, so my prices are the same. Will I periodically have a wholesale? There are some paintings that I feel I can do in wholesale price to those that buy for like staging their homes and they buy homes and they need art for it. I do have certain levels of art on thinner canvases that are not framed, maybe don't have all the layers I might want on the art, that I will sell wholesale. That's a whole nother discussion. But for the most part, come up with a structure. I do length times width times the dollar amount. Let's see. Spray paint. I recently do a lot more spray paint. I used to use Liquitex spray paint, but after one use, it would get clogged. And then they would tell me, well, you have to hold the can upside down, shake it for so many times. And I would get new spray tops. I gave all my Liquitex away. I went to Gold's, Montana Gold, and I loved them. But they smell and you have to use them outside. I recently found, and I put that in my Amazon store, a water-based spray paint that you can use indoors. It doesn't smell, and it doesn't have those fumes, and I love them. There's a little bit different quality, not that they're bad quality, but the attributes about them are a little bit different. But I'm loving them, and I use them a lot, and it helps because a lot of my art I would have to take outside and use the spray paint outside and then drag it inside. And my husband is very sensitive, would always say, I smell that spray paint. So the water base has really been wonderful for me. We talked about the water bottles. We talked about the brayers for moving paint around. We talked about fixatives. I was asked, what type of paper or fabric do I use in my collages? I use so many. There's no way I could tell you all of them. There was one particular. It's it's like a mate bark paper from Mexico. There's a lot of different kinds. I do have the kind I use on my Amazon store. They're not cheap, but I will use it as a signature piece. I will cut a piece off and use it in my art. It has holes in it. It's textured, so you have to use a gel medium and really let it dry for it to adhere to your painting. You can paint over it, and the paint kind of like soaks in the holes, and it looks beautiful. There's several different types of this same wooden paper from Mexico. I love that. I've gone to a local, not necessarily like Michael's, but more of a art store, and you'll see an area where they have collage papers. And I use cheesecloth. I will use gauze that you use for wounds, handmade papers, even copy paper, deli paper, waxed deli paper, unwaxed deli paper, a lot of different types of papers. I will use sheets that look like they're paper. I like anything that looks like you can shred the ends of it. There's like a black lace paper I get at the art store. I don't have a link to that, but if you go to an art store, they usually will have a whole wall of beautiful papers that you can get. There's like a particular mold paper. Anyway, there's a lot of different types of papers. Do you paint to music? Not always. I paint a lot of times to quietness. I like to paint. I'm an introvert. I have a lot of music going on in my home normally, and it's usually from my dad being a musician in the Air Force Band. I grew up in the back of a band room, traveled all over the United States, overseas to Spain and different places there, Portugal, different places with him, and depending on where I lived, a lot of times I'd get out of school and I'd go over and sit in the band room and wait for him, and he'd drive me home. I had a brother and a sister. My brother's passed, but we all lived like that. And I will listen to classical music. I love cello. I love piano. I love violin. I love Christian music, but I don't listen to anything other than maybe cello or violin or piano when I'm painting. If I deliberately want to paint something with lots of movement, I will listen to something that has lots of movement to it, but I basically paint quietly. But that's a preference thing. This question I struggled answering. I wasn't quite sure. But they said, I sometimes get lost or too busy in the process. Is there such a thing as an abstract structure in your thinking process while using curvilinear forms and shapes? How I answered this and how I format my thoughts of painting. I paint very intuitively. I'll start the painting without a plan. Very rarely will I have a plan when I start my paintings. You can look at somebody's painting and say, that inspires me. I'm going to start my painting with that in mind. I started very openly, but I use the elements of art, and that's what we're going through in my membership. I've mentored other artists before, and we go through that with them. I talk about that with the master artisans on their individual pieces. But the artisan membership, we have already been over composition. And because I was just thinking about music. And then the other was the value. We just hit on value, and there's going to be more on value. But those are the things I think about more. I think about opposites. I think about shapes. I think about, if I have a lot of circular in there, how can I get some lines in there? And that just comes from understanding the elements of art, understanding texture, understanding form, understanding color, mainly understanding the types of composition. And my compositions for abstracts are totally different. I can't say totally, but vastly different than if you were to go out there and Google composition. How I teach composition is quite different because my paintings are very abstract expressionist, and I needed to understand myself how to have some composition under the umbrella of abstract expressionist work. It's very different. I didn't understand, some of the rules of, people who do realism, how to equate that into my abstracts, because a lot of times the composition didn't come until in the middle of the painting, near the end, and the end. And then value is critically important for me. I think about that more than I do anything else in my painting. But that all comes with practice. That all comes with understanding how to use these elements of art and practicing them so that when you are painting, it becomes second nature, like riding a bike, so to say. So those are the questions I had. I didn't want to make this video too long. I hope to get back into the studio painting. The doctor told me be careful for 7 days. I give myself another day. I know myself. But I'll be careful. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please leave me questions. If you have something to add, every artist has different practices. Add, what you want about something that I've said, how you do your practice. I'd love a thumbs up. The last couple videos, I haven't got a thumbs down, but there was like 3 or 4 months in a row, there was one person that would leave a thumbs down. Maybe they've been on vacation, but they don't tell me why. And I don't know. Not everybody's going to like me. Not everyone's going to like my style. I don't know why you do a thumbs down and continue to watch me when there's so many other people out there that are thinner than me, prettier than me. Okay, let's not get off on that. But yeah, I do struggle with that, and I struggle with wanting to please everybody all the time, and I know I can't. But if anything in this was helpful, just leaves a thumbs up to help the algorithm. YouTube pushes it out to more people when there's thumbs up and comments, and when there's nothing, they don't push it anywhere. So that would be helpful to me. That'd be a thanks to me. And join my membership, at least for a month, to see what it's all about. Especially if some of these questions on how to understand how to finish your painting, how to get out of the ugly stage, how to even move further because you're stuck. I go over a lot of that, and this is only the second month, so there's a lot more to come. But join the membership for a while and see what you think. But anyway, thank you for being a part of this with me, and I'm going to be quiet now, and hopefully this wasn't too boring because there was no painting, but I'm doing what I'm supposed to by taking care of myself. So I love you, thank you, and until next time, bye. What's that?